Coming up on Texas Parks and Wildlife.
My parents started bringing me here when I was a little kid in 1946. I got a 4-year-old grandson that's here, and he loves it. That's all he talks about, coming to Garner.
Texas has over 191,000 miles of rivers and streams, and one of the ways I've found to enjoy those rivers and streams is in a canoe.
Well, this guy might be pretty old. We've taken cores out of trees that are more than 500 years old.
Texas Parks and Wildlife, a television series for all outdoors.
This series is funded in part by a grant from the Wildlife and Sport Fish Restoration Program. Through your purchase of hunting and fishing equipment and motorboat fuels, over $40 million in conservation efforts are funded in Texas each year.
Additional funding provided by Ram Trucks. Guts, glory, Ram.
Garner's just kind of its own little creature within itself. It's unique compared to any other park. There's something magical about it.
Located on the southern edge of the hill country, Garner State Park is one of the most popular destinations in the state, and there are lots of reasons why. There's the Frio River. There's camping.
It's got a king-size bed on one end, queen-size bed on the other.
There's hiking.
We made it.
And then there's the nightly dances.
We may have 400 people on that dance floor. It's a pretty amazing sight. Only at Garner.
Garner was built in the 1930s by the Civilian Conservation Corps. It opened as a state park in 1941, and generations of Texans have been coming here ever since.
My parents started bringing me here when I was a little kid in 1946. I got a 4-year-old grandson that's here, and he loves it. That's all he talks about, coming to Garner.
Well, right now during the summer, it's probably one of the busiest places in Texas.
If you don't believe it, just try getting in on a holiday weekend.
How many we got?
Just for the day?
I think Memorial Weekend,
There you go.
the line was probably half a mile long.
$70 is your change. $2 your change, sir.
There's a lot of folks here.
Thanks, sir. Have a good day.
But beyond the summertime crowds, there is a softer, quieter side to the park.
Early mornings and really the off season after the summer, it's unbelievable how different this park is.
You know, in the fall, if you go up on Baldy, you can see the complete outline of the river because of the bald cypress trees when they turn colors. It's my favorite time of year.
Well, there's 3 types of skunks here in the park.
Not only is there a lot to see at Garner, there's a lot to hear, like park interpreter Frank Roberts.
It's called a striped skunk.
He's a walking book of knowledge when it comes to the park. And not only that, he's entertaining.
Frank is known around these parts as the singing park ranger.
And the night riders crowding them onto the trail. So I was going to use that as a history lesson of Western heritage. So that's when I started performing cowboy songs, cowboy poetry. And the skies are not cloudy all day. Thank you.
I need a marshmallow.
There's so many things that a family can do here. they know they can come here and they can have the best time of their lives.
Malcolm Cleveland. Well, he is part researcher, part historian, and part climate detective is probably a good way to put it.
Beautiful trees. We're studying the bald cypress trees because we're interested in getting the information about climate out of the tree rings. The bald cypress, although they do grow right in the water or right next to the water, they actually show the influence of climate. The center is right here. If it's a good growing year, they put on a nice ring, and in a drought, they'll put on a much smaller ring.
Trees like these, along the San Bernard River west of Houston, have been keeping climate records much longer than people have.
Right now we've got a chronology here that goes back to the 1400s. I'm convinced that many of these trees started growing before Europeans came to the New World.
The quest for such long-term data has Malcolm Cleveland seeking out the oldest cypress trees in south central Texas. His research is being funded by the Guadalupe Blanco River Authority.
We manage a river that is spring dependent, and that's unusual in Texas. The Guadalupe River is dependent on the two major Edwards Aquifer springs. We're in a drought right now, and 80% of the water in the river is coming out of those two springs. And so it's important for us to know what types of droughts we have to contend with in the future, and we're trying to figure that out by seeing what kinds of droughts have impacted our region over the past.
We don't have a good record for central Texas yet. Main thing is that bald cypress get old. The bald cypress have the potential of going back at least 700 or 800 years. I'm sure we'll get 400 to 500 years out of this site, and they say that there are older trees downstream. Certainly there are bigger trees downstream. Whether they're older, I don't know, but we'll sure find out.
You ready?
Yep.
Oh, you gotta warn me when you're doing that.
Well, I didn't know I was going to do it myself.
With a research assistant, Malcolm hits the water. Finding the oldest cypress trees requires a boat.
There we go.
And finding the best specimens takes some hunting.
That guy's probably old, but look at him. He's hollow.
Up and down the river, they examine trees.
This is a beautiful little river.
To the point of distraction.
Get too wrapped up in looking at the trees.
Unfortunately, at this site, the oldest cypress seemed to have one thing in common.
Yeah, he's hollow.
Rot.
That is very discouraging. If all these trees here were solid, I'm convinced that we would have a 700-year record of drought, maybe longer.
But the San Bernard River is just one site being surveyed for this climate study.
It's like a treasure hunt. I've visited, I guess, maybe a dozen sites now, state parks, all sorts of places that we have gone where there are bald cypress, and then you have to sample them and see how old they are. You just can't tell by how large bald cypress is how old it is, and so that makes it even more difficult.
Back at the University of Arkansas, the cores are transformed into tree ring timelines.
When we get back in the lab, we mount the samples, and then we sand it very carefully so that you can see every little detail of the core.
Tree ring dating, or dendrochronology, is possible because trees generally form a new ring each year. Wet years grow wide rings, dry years are narrow. Over many years, the wide and narrow patterns are unique snapshots of the climate and can be cross-dated to other trees from the area.
Well, cross-dating is the way in which we ensure that the chronology is exact. You need to match the patterns of wide and narrow rings in many trees and between many sites to make sure that your chronology is correct. The problem is most of these trees have heart rot. And so if it's 12 inches in diameter and you only got 4 inches out of it, who knows what you missed in the heart rot zone.
Hit a rot pocket.
Too bad.
In an attempt to bypass rot, scientists may take multiple cores. Fortunately, sampling does not harm these trees.
The long-lived trees like oak and bald cypress have developed strategies for coping with wounding. I think it'll have turned by October. They don't live 1,000 years or even 300 years if they can't cope with wounds. And so they'll seal off. You come back in September and look for the holes where we took out our little sample, and you won't be able to see it because it will have grown over.
Ultimately, some 750 tree ring samples are taken to reveal a long-term history of rainfall and the lack of it.
Water planning is based on the worst drought for which you have detailed records, and that's the drought of the 50s, the statewide drought from 1950 to 1957, but parts of Texas actually were in that drought from probably 42, 43 to 57. So there are some that think, you know, that drought's an aberration, probably won't have another drought like that for 1,000 years or so. And we're finding with these tree ring studies that it's actually a regularly occurring event and happens about every 50 to 100 years. And sometimes it's much worse than it was during the 50s.
There have been some really bad droughts in the past. Droughts that make, the 1950s drought look like a wet period. If your climate records only go back to the 1850s, that doesn't tell you anything about what the worst possible drought is. You really need these records from tree rings to tell us, so we plan to go to the Texas Water Conservation Association and show them.
Next presentation, we've got 2 speakers. Gentlemen.
Here is the long-term reconstruction from 1500.
There's at least one really bad drought per century.
Bad drought period here, the 1700s and the early 1800s look a lot worse.
It would be worse because the population has grown.
Now we know a lot more about drought than we did. One of the messages today was maybe we ought to think about how we would cope with one of these more severe droughts that occurred in the past. We planned for a 10-year drought, but what do we do year 11?
There are signs that the climate is changing, and it's not changing for the better. It's going to make life a lot harder. And I know in Texas now, there are ranchers that have had to sell off their herds, and it's a terrible hardship. And if that becomes the new climatology, we're in really serious trouble. Some say the drought of the 1950s was a 1 in 1,000 year event. Well, that's not true. On the other hand, if you say, well, the drought of the 1950s was bad, but we know that there are worse droughts in the past, then you can make some planning. We're trying to illuminate some of these forgotten chapters of history.
That history cannot reveal exactly when the next drought will come, or just how bad it may be. But we can be better prepared for future droughts because of scientists like Malcolm Cleveland, these grand old trees, and what they can tell us about the past.
Well, this guy might be pretty old.
That one?
Yep. All right.
Oh, there's something. Oh, there, it just came from the back of the tree.
Hear him calling?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the Carolina wren.
Oh,
What is it?
oh, it looks like a black and white warbler. There's a bunch of them.
This will wake everyone up. See the chickadee right down there?
13-year-old Jessie Huth is not a typical teenager.
Mockingbird. Mockingbird.
While it's usually the parents who drag the kids outdoors, today this bird-watching phenom has brought his mom along to take part in his favorite outdoor pursuit.
It's preening itself. It's cleaning. There's always birds everywhere, and you never know what kind of bird is going to pop up right behind you.
Birding has given us a chance to do something together.
Jesse and Jackie are among the millions of Texans caught up in the feathered frenzy of birding.
Oh, pileated woodpecker. Texas is a good place to start birding because there are more species of birds documented in the state of Texas than any other state in the country. And we have several species, about 40 birds, that are occurring nowhere else in the U.S. So if you want to see things like plain chachalaca or Altamira oriole or green jay, you come to Texas to see those birds.
Oh, he's different.
Yeah,
he's something different. What is that?
It looks like an eye ring and a pale face. Oh, that's a ruby-crowned kinglet. See?
While Jesse explains the field marks of the ruby-crowned kinglet to Mom, let's review some of the basic equipment you'll need to get started. First and foremost, it's kind of tough to find the birds without binoculars. The price range starts at around $50 on the low end to well over $1,000 for top of the line. Learning how to use them effectively can take a little practice.
If you spot a bird, you don't want to look away from the bird and then start looking all around in your binoculars, because chances are you won't find that same bird. What you want to do is look right at the bird and bring the binoculars right up to your eyes while you're still looking at the bird, and the bird should be right in that field of view.
The other must-have item is a field guide. Most birders prefer those with painted pictures as opposed to photographs.
Paintings are a lot better because the artist does a lot of homework trying to get the one image to be the fitting image for the bird.
What was that?
A red bill, that'd be a Caspian.
Texas is a big state, so when it comes to where to go birding, it may seem a bit intimidating.
He's right in between the two trees.
Groups like the Audubon Society sponsor guided trips.
Okay, guys, look at that blue-headed vireo up there sitting on a tree branch.
And these field trips take place no matter the weather.
Well, I think winter is the best time for birding here. It's cooler. It's much more pleasant to go out. The trees, a lot of trees lose their leaves. The birds are much easier to see in the winter. Yeah, winter I think is a great time to go birding.
Boat tours can take birders to more remote destinations.
You got two whooping cranes right straight out there in that marsh, and the other one is in there somewhere. Okay, keep your cameras on these. They're going to fly across the bow of the boat. I knew they were going to do it. Take those pictures.
The best bang for the birding buck might be Texas Parks and Wildlife's trail maps.
Texas Parks and Wildlife really wanted to help the nature tourists that were coming to Texas and the people that already lived here identify what sites throughout the state of Texas you could go to see a diversity of wildlife.
62 Prospect Park.
Prospect Park over here.
We now have the birding and the wildlife trail maps so that people can go and buy these maps for the region of Texas they're going to visit or that they live in, and they can go see hundreds of birding hotspots and wildlife hotspots throughout the region.
The Great Texas Wildlife Trails cover almost the entire state.
Good morning, everybody. How are you this morning?
Along the Coastal Birding Trail is one of the premier birding destinations in the United States, the World Birding Center at Benson Rio Grande Valley State Park.
Uh-oh, he flew while I was telling y'all where he was. He was on the trunk.
All birders from across the continent come here to see about 50 species of birds that only occur right down here in the southern tip of Texas and no place else north of Mexico.
And then they say this really cool song. It goes, hip, 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 hooray! That's a paraki.
A tram takes visitors on a tour of the park.
You're taking pictures, aren't you?
Yeah. Bird blinds tucked under native trees and shrubs provide perfect photo opportunities.
Oh, that's the javelina, green jays. What else have we got?
One of the things that's really good about birding here is they've got these feeders set out, and the birds are here anyway, but they get drawn to the feeders and the water features. Whether they're little children or people who are in wheelchairs, the blinds here are handy for everybody.
I like the way that snag is right at the very end down there.
Yeah, right. It's a
great
perfect perch. It's a perfect natural perch.
And a new 2-story high hawk tower provides excellent opportunities for all birders.
One of them was calling from someplace across
was
the
it?
Osaka.
Oh, wow.
The peregrine falcon getting up here and flying toward us now.
But you don't have to travel to South Texas to see birds.
Oh, look up there. Look up there in the wing dome. There's a Carolina chickadee.
For Walt and Jane Brown, the birds come to them.
Most mornings, we'll have our coffee out here in the backyard, and you'd never know you're in the middle of the city. We sit here and watch the birds come in, watch the butterflies wake up. Just a wonderful way to start a day.
I'm so glad to see that the butterflies are coming back in.
Oh, look at the white-winged doves. They are really coming in for their afternoon feeding. They are pigs.
8 years ago, the Browns started a wildscape in their backyard, planting native shrubs, ground cover, and flowers.
When we moved here, we had two kinds of birds, mockingbird and grackle. And in 8 years with plants and providing water, we now have counted 74 different species that have come into our yard.
This is a very healthy plant.
Native plants are probably the lowest maintenance plants. A little pruning. When we first put them in, I watch them and water them if they need it. After that, they're on their own.
This is something I never thought was possible. Look at this. Look what we have here. We've created a habitat so the butterflies will lay their eggs. They'll hatch out into caterpillars and form new butterflies after the chrysalis stage. Until we started this type of landscaping, I never thought this was possible. You hear a lot about development destroying habitat. Well, by putting in a few plants, you can actually just change the habitat and provide for the wildlife.
It's a wonderful thing to have all these birds coming to your house. You don't have to go see them, they come to see you.
It can be birding in a backyard or out on a trail. Wherever you are, birding connects you with the natural world.
I think that's really the core of it. It opens your eyes to so many other parts of nature and what's around us and what we have to be thankful for. You know, the beauty of this country. Oh, there's a flock of something flying up there. Every trip's a new adventure, new birds, and it's just great to be out in the field and see the birds. There's no way better to appreciate the outdoors than going birding. I mean, it's everything. A lot of good birds. Yeah.
Texas has over 191,000 miles of rivers and streams, and one of the ways I've found to enjoy those rivers and streams is in a canoe. And the reason is a canoe is light and easy to transport, and because canoes are light, you can carry them right down to the water. You don't need a big ramp to put in. You can just carry them down and put them in the water most anywhere. These are two different types of canoes, as you can tell. This one is made out of a laminated material, and it's almost indestructible. If you hit something in the water, like in a Texas stream or rock, you won't bend it up. Whereas this one is made out of aluminum, and it will mark up pretty easy. This canoe also has a lot more capacity. You can put more people or gear in it. Whereas this one has other features. It's lightweight, and that's one of the reasons I use it to paddle for fitness. There's several parts of the canoe that are pretty standard. The bow is the front, the stern is in the back. Of course, you got a bow and a stern seat. You need to have, by state law, 2 life jackets, at least 2 paddles, maybe a spare, and a good friend to have a good time on the water.
This series is funded in part by a grant from the Wildlife and Sport Fish Restoration Program. Through your purchase of hunting and fishing equipment and motorboat fuels, over $40 million in conservation efforts are funded in Texas each year.
Additional funding provided by Ram Trucks. Guts, glory, Ram.